So I'll try to find a way around this as soon as possible. If any one of you have any suggestions regarding this, please let me know, because we need to find a way to record it better, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start with sleep, and then we'll go on to memory.
Yeah, that's okay. No worries.
Perfect. So, what is the part of the brain that is the most involved in sleep and awakening, both the experiences?
Reticular activating system.
Okay, perfect. Great answer. And what is the reticular activating system composed of?
Ascending and descending reticular fibers, basically, which involve serotonergic fibers.
Right. So, um, what is the main area for the production of acetylcholine?
Locus coeruleus. Oh, sorry. Basal nucleus of Maynard.
Basal nucleus of Maynard.
M-A-Y-N-E-R-T. Maynard.
Okay. Besides that?
Good question. Don't know.
Okay. So it's the laterodorsal tegmentum and the pedunculopontine nucleus. These are very important nuclei as far as acetylcholine is concerned, right? Specifically in the reticular activating system. So remember this, the PPT-LDT pathway or the PPT-LDT nuclei are very essential for acetylcholine. Pedunculopontine and laterodorsal tegmental area. Okay, these are very essential for your acetylcholine. Then what is the main nucleus which produces the serotonin?
Locus coeruleus.
No, that's norepinephrine.
Oh, sorry.
Norepinephrine
Why am I
is
stuck with
produced
Locus?
by locus coeruleus. That's all right. That's all right. What produces the serotonin?
Medial Raphe nuclei.
Medial
Dorsal
Raphe.
raphe nucleus. Okay, and what are the other areas of the reticular activating system besides these three? One is the intralaminar nuclei of the thalamus. Okay. Then you also have the parabrachial nuclei, and you also have the basal forebrain. Now think of the reticular activating system as the main center which is responsible for two things. Remember AA, right? So remember arousal. So are you people writing along with me, or how are you guys usually uh, maintaining your attention over a long period of time during these classes?
Writing.
Okay, good. So I think that will really help you, and we'll study the scientific basis to that when we study memory. So I think by the time you're done with studying memory, your study techniques will change a lot. Okay, so remember this word AA, right? Two things. So the reticular activating system is responsible for arousal and awareness. But of what? Of self and the environment both. All right. So remember this thing. Okay. So now just think of, I'm just drawing a basic structure so that you can visualize how the reticular activating system works. All right. So think of it as a chain of nuclei along the brainstem. Okay. Then they go on and they relay in the intralaminar nuclei of the thalami. You have your thalami here. And then they spread on to the various parts of the cortex. So you have your ascending pathways and you have your descending pathways, but this is essentially what is responsible for the two A's. What were the two A's?
Arousal and awareness.
Right. So now you have all these neurotransmitters playing a very important role in your sleep. Okay. So what are the the way you'll study sleep is that there are two phases of sleep. Once you know this, then you'll get a little bit of more clarity regarding what roles and how neurotransmitters work during the sleep. So what are the two main types of sleep?
REM sleep and non-REM sleep.
Okay, which one comes first?
Non-REM sleep. REM sleep.
So no, the one that comes first is
Non-REM.
NREM. Good. And the one that comes after that is a REM
REM.
sleep. Okay. And how many phases does the NREM sleep have?
4.
Okay.
Now it's set
And
to 3, I guess.
yeah, now they've converted it into 3, but I think the college is still sticking with 4. I had this question in my paper. I'm not sure if they've changed it now. So we'll study the 4 stages and then we'll go on to the 3 stages. So what is the time distribution in a 90-minute cycle? What would you say? So if there is a 90-minute cycle, right? Usually on an average, out of 100% of sleep, how many percentage is the NREM and how many percentage is the REM sleep?
Well, it depends upon the time of the sleep. In the initial stages, the NREM predominates and the duration of REM is short. But as
Great.
the night progresses
Yeah,
or the sleep progresses, the proportion of
exactly.
REM increases and the NREM decreases. It's almost say 70-75% in the first hour of sleep, which gets reversed by the end of your one full cycle of sleep.
Okay, that's a good answer. So initially, when the sleep starts, it is 75% NREM and 25% REM. These are all rough figures, okay? But these are figures that you need to have an orientation about because they tend to ask these figures. So when the sleep starts, it is usually 75% NREM, 25% REM, and gradually, like you said, over a period of time, the REM latency over the period of the night, the REM latency decreases. And by latency, what we mean is the amount of time which is required to have the onset of REM sleep. So there will be two really important concepts as far as the latency is concerned, which are important. That is the sleep latency, and there will be the REM latency. Now, specifically, what is important is why do people on benzodiazepines, if you have seen a lot of clinical patients, they'll tell you that the benzodiazepine sleep is not um, very gratifying, or it's not very peaceful as far as their natural sleep is concerned. So the way the natural sleep differs from the benzodiazepine sleep is that these benzodiazepines will increase your NREM sleep, but they tend to increase the REM latency and reduce the REM duration. And that's why a lot of patients don't really feel that natural sense of sleep with benzodiazepines. But this is a concept that you need to remember, and that is what is sleep latency and what is REM latency. Okay, so 75% of your initial cycle of the initial 90-minute cycle of your sleep, 75% will be NREM, 25 will be REM. Now, what is the distribution amongst these four stages, the four stages of NREM sleep?
Stage 1 is 5%, stage 2 is 45, stage 3 is, I think, stage 3 and 4 is 15, I'm not sure.
You're able to see the screen, right?
Yeah, sorry, 12 and 13.
Okay. So if by any chance I forget activating the screen, please do remind me. So yeah, this is these are the durations that they've given in the SPMM and the Oxford textbook, if I'm not mistaken. So remember that you have to do 5, 45, 12, 13. Okay. And so you're left with the another 25%, which is essentially your REM sleep. So now they'll ask you a very important question, and they'll ask you that where do you see nightmares and where do you see night terrors? I was asked this question in my paper A. Can anyone tell me the difference between nightmares and night terrors?
Night terrors are in non-REM. Nightmares are in REM. Night terrors are not recalled. Nightmares are recalled. Night terrors are more common in growing children, in which they don't have recollection the next morning. Usually occurs in 2 or 3, if I remember, stage 3. So within 1.5 to 2 hours of going to bed, the child would wake up screaming in night terror. REM would occur late in the night. Usually in the early nightmare would occur early morning hours, would have vivid recollections with lot of autonomic activity.
Yeah. Great. So very good answer. Very good answer. This is the thing that you need to remember the most, is that it is in the phase 3 mostly. And I was asked whether the night terrors are in 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I think in SPMM they've given that it is in 3 and 4 both, but I think the 3 one is more essential, specifically now that they have only 3 types of three stages in the NREM sleep. Does anyone know the distribution of percentages in the NREM with 1, 2, 3 only? Because I don't know that.
No, I don't know.
I came across a thing where it said that I think 3 and 4 is combined now.
Okay, so it is combined, so
I'm,
it stands for essentially 25%.
I'm not
Is that
really
so?
sure though. I'm not really sure though.
Okay. Okay. All right. But do remember this, night terrors are not recalled, nightmares are recalled. Night terrors occur in the stage 3 of NREM and nightmares occur in the REM sleep. All right. These are very important, easy MCQs that I don't want you to mess up, because these, just if you see them once, I don't think you would forget again. All right. So now the way you study neurotransmitters for sleep essentially is by this graph that you get is, and you'll see awake, you'll see NREM, and you'll see REM. Now, if you want to study these neurotransmitters in a lot of detail, there are a lot of YouTube videos which have at least 6-7 hours of content only on neurotransmitters during sleep. But I'll just simplify it for you, and that is that most of the monoamines, and by monoamines, can anyone just enlist the monoaminergic neurotransmitters, please?
Serotonin, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline.
Right. So these are essentially awake on REM off neurons. Okay. These are at their highest when you are in an awake state, and these are at their lowest when you are in REM sleep. Whereas the acetylcholinergic neurons So what would you call this?
Hmm.
What would you call this pattern? So this is a wake on, REM on pattern. So acetylcholinergic neurons are active when they are in the awake phase, and they are also active when they are in the REM phase, but they are not really active when they are in the NREM phase. Makes sense so far?
Yep.
Okay. This concept is very essential, and the more you study this concept, the more sense it will make. Okay. So remember this thing now, that histamine will initiate your wakefulness, because so a lot of experiments were performed to make sure that um, the exact amount of neurotransmitters during various stages of sleep are identified, and these experiments are called optogenic experiments. Okay. And what they found out was that before a mice wakes up, there is a histamine rise, and the norepinephrine also rises, but it rises after the mice has woken up. So put it too simply, and this is not exact science, but just to gain a hold of or gain a bird eye view about what the neurotransmitters are essentially doing, is that histamine will rise when there is initiation of wakefulness or causation of wakefulness. Sorry, I'm really sorry, I messed it up. It's the other way around. Norepinephrine will initiate the wakefulness because there will be a sympathetic hyperactivity, and the histamine will maintain the wakefulness. I'm really sorry for the confusion. Okay. And so what do antihistaminergic drugs do?
Sedation.
They cause sedation. Okay. Now, what neurotransmitter would you say is REM inducing? Acetylcholine is a REM inducing neurotransmitter, right? Because see, when you transition from the awake state to the NREM state, your acetylcholine is going down. But as the acetylcholine increases in amount, your REM sleep starts to increase, right? So it is the REM inducing neurotransmitter. Now, acetylcholine is essentially also produced in the pontine reticular formation, where it triggers the onset of REM sleep. It is also it also has a role in the thalamus because it will block the NREM sleep. So there are a lot of things going on deep inside, but the only thing that I think you need to remember right now is that it induces the REM sleep. And acetylcholinergic levels, specifically in the pontine reticular formation, in PRF or pontine reticular formation, the acetylcholinergic levels will be highest during the REM sleep, and it will be lowest in NREM, and it will be midway when you are awake. That is not the case with the basal forebrain though. In basal forebrain, during waking and during REM, both are almost at the similar level. Okay. Now, what is the role of hypocretin? Does anyone know a disorder or a sleep disorder which is specifically associated with hypocretin?
Narcolepsy.
Very good. Very
Narcolepsy.
good. So now the reason why this neurotransmitter is also known as hypocretin and the same is also known as orexin is because two pairs of scientists or two groups of scientists discovered this chemical at the same time, and that's why it was discovered in 1998, and it was essentially located in the lateral hypothalamus. Okay. And hypocretin is essentially it's a peptide, right? It's a peptide. It's a protein, and it projects to a lot of areas. So from the lateral hypothalamus, it will project to the tuberomammillary nucleus. And anyone knows what the tuberomammillary nucleus develops or produces? It produces histamine. Okay. It will also go on to the locus coeruleus. And what does the locus coeruleus secrete?
Norepinephrine.
What does the DRN secrete?
Serotonin.
And it also goes to the laterodorsal tegmental and pedunculopontine nucleus. And what does this secrete?
Acetylcholine.
Okay. So what do you think? What do you think hypocretin does? Anyone?
So one of the roles, I'm not sure if it fits here. It has a role in the satiety and hunger pathway.
It does. It does. Absolutely, it does. And so it also receives an input actually. So these are the afferents that we talked about. That is the sorry. These are the projections that we talked about. But it also receives afferents from the basal forebrain. It receives afferents from the ventral tegmental area, and it also essentially receives afferents which are associated with the peripheral metabolic receptors. And does anyone, since we are discussing that, they will ask you this: what is the main neurotransmitter which is responsible for satiety, and what is the main neurotransmitter responsible for hunger?
Ghrelin,
Ghrelin is responsible for
hunger.
always always make these tricks when you have such something confusing. So when you're hungry, you tend to go angry and be irritable, right? So ghrelin is responsible for hunger, and leptin is responsible for satiety. Also remember that being satisfied is something which is medial in location, right? So it is the medial nucleus of the hypothalamus which produces leptin, and the lateral one which produces ghrelin. Just some short memory tricks that I have used to help myself. You can play around it or whatever you feel all right. Okay, so hypocretin, what it does is it gives out connections to all these neurons. And as we know, these all neurons are very much responsible for sleep. So it helps in maintaining wakefulness. And it also plays an important role in maintaining the NREM sleep. So what would happen if the hypocretin just goes away suddenly? You would not only have sudden onsets of sleep, but you would have sudden onsets of REM sleep. And is that a core criteria of narcolepsy? Anyone? So short
Yes.
REM latency and increased REM duration is a core criteria of narcolepsy, along with reduced hypocretin levels in the blood, and it also has cataplexy. So what is cataplexy? Again, a very
Sudden loss of tone. Sudden loss of
sudden
tone.
loss of muscle tone. Yeah, that is how it usually presents in adults. But how does cataplexy usually present in children? This is also given in the DSM criteria.
Unable
So
to hold the
usually
head.
Sudden.
cataplexy. Sorry.
I'm not sure. I think sudden laughter or sudden emotional burst.
Sudden laughter or sudden emotional burst is what precipitates cataplexy with
Okay.
intact awareness. So that will precipitate an episode of cataplexy, that is sudden loss of muscle tone, will be precipitated by an emotional or a sudden laughter. If you're not able to visualize this, I highly recommend using YouTube and just going through a couple of videos of cataplexy. When you visualize it and when you see it for a couple of times, you will never forget it. But in children, it usually presents with filling up air in the mouth, thrusting of the tongue, grunting sounds. These are common manifestations of cataplexy, which are usually very much ignored. Okay, so narcolepsy, we kind of just touched upon narcolepsy and covered its core features. So can anyone just quickly summarize the 3 core features of narcolepsy, and then we'll move ahead? One is cataplexy, right? What is the other one?
Decreased hypocretin level, decreased hypocretin level, sorry. And
Okay.
Sudden onset of REM sleep and short REM latency.
Okay. Anything else? Which is not a core criteria, but is again a very commonly asked question in the paper A exam. What do these mean? What is
Before
Gogic
going
and
to
what is
sleep,
Pompic? Yeah.
Before going to sleep,
But which
and
one?
while waking up.
Yeah.
Type
So
of
Gogic is
hallucination.
while going to sleep and Pompic is while waking up. All right. Is this clear? And what is the treatment usually of narcolepsy?
Tricyclic antidepressants. Aren't they?
Right. Tricyclics is a good option. Some people also tend to use SSRIs because it reduces REM sleep. Any others?